Coming in Facebook, coming in YouTube, getting ready to start my show, Jimmy Rants, over on Instagram. Thank you so much for being here today. I have an interesting dilemma here today during the live because I know I have a package coming from FedEx and I'm supposed to sign for this package when it comes. The package was actually attempted to be delivered yesterday, but I was not at home when it came. And it happened shortly after I got done with Jimmy Rants, and I had to leave to go take care of some business yesterday. And so they're going to try to attempt to deliver again today. And I'm thinking in their minds, okay, he wasn't home at around 12:45, 1 o'clock, or whenever they tried to deliver. Let's try earlier today. So in the middle of Jimmy Rants today, you may hear a knock at the door where I have to go because I have to sign my name for this particular package. Hello, Norma and Christine, David, Kira. Thank you guys for being here today. Too bad the cat can't sign for packages. Hello, Shirley over on YouTube. Yeah, I've got my black cat, Skunk, is out on the front porch. In fact, I put a sign up. I have a Ring little doorbell thing. And usually they hit it. Well, the problem is it doesn't work, and it hasn't worked for a while. The Wi-Fi can't reach out there for some reason. So I put a big sign over the top of the Ring that said, FedEx guy, please go knock on the door. And so my door is literally like 6 feet from me right here. So if he knocks on the door, I will hear it, and I'll be like, yeah, you guys, hang on a second. And I'll go to the door. Literally never had to be interrupted in the middle of Jimmy Rants. I have had some friends that were coming to take care of things in the house, and they just happened to walk in during Jimmy Rant. They know I do a live show 11 a.m., but some reason they still showed up. It is what it is. So anyway, just thought I'd give you guys a heads up today that if you hear a knock at the door, I will go, hang on a second, because that's a very important package I've been waiting on, and it does require a signature, so it is what it is. But hope you guys are having a great day. I have been up since super early this morning. I was up at 1 a.m. There's just some nights, and I know you have these nights from time to time, there's just some nights where you sleep and it just doesn't go any longer than 1 a.m. So I did go to bed, what was it, right around just before 8 p.m. So it wasn't long sleep. It was decent sleep. I had a couple hours of deep and over an hour of REM, but dang, I like to get a little more than that, but got some stuff I'm dealing with in my life, and so that happens, and it's okay. You don't beat yourself up about it. But I have an interesting topic we're going to talk about on Jimmy Rants today, and it has to do with what's going to happen 2 weeks from today, and how you deal with it if your candidate happens to lose. A lot of people are not preparing themselves. I'm telling you, prepare yourself mentally now. Hello, Russ. Prepare yourself mentally now for what is the inevitability for one side or the other. You should be prepared about what you're going to do once the election is over, and if your candidate loses, how are you going to respond? So let's get this show on the road. This should be a fun episode. Hello, Lisa. Thank you for being here today. We're starting my show, Jimmy Rants, over on Instagram, and here we go. How are you going to respond if your chosen political candidate loses the election? Find out here today on Jimmy Rants. Click on that little box down there in the corner. It'll lead you to IGTV for today's episode. JimmyRants.com is the website, and as always, you can engage live in the content. You got to go follow me, though. I am over at Instagram. I am at Living Low Carb Man, LivinLowCarbMan. Once you're there, engage live. We are here Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, so thank you so much for joining us today. We also simulcast live over here on my Facebook page. Thank you guys for being here, as well as over on my YouTube channel. Thank you all for being here today on Jimmy Rants. If you missed it, you can watch it on replay right here on Instagram. We put it up over on IGTV. It goes up right after the show is over. Yesterday's episode had a lot of people watching that one. So thank you to all the people who watched the replay on IGTV. We also put the replay up over on YouTube. If you type in the keyword Jimmy Rants, you will find the show. Today is Living La Vida Low Carb Show Jimmy Rants Day. It's where I air a best of Jimmy Rants episode over on my flagship podcast, the Living La Vida Low Carb Show. So that's llvlc.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. So go listen to that here today. And then finally, pop over to the official website for this show right here. It is jimmyrants.com. Once you're there, you can see all the past episodes, and it can enable you to show your support if you want to do that. Patreon and PayPal, the links are there at jimmyrants.com. Okay, you guys, today I have a very, very interesting topic that I think you will find very prescient, considering 2 weeks from today, we're doing something historic. We're going to be voting for not just president, but all kinds of elections. The president is the one that gets most of the attention, presidential race, but really the Senate races, the House races, your local races, dog catcher, all of those things. And I've always wondered if people prepare themselves mentally for the inevitability. And the inevitability is somebody's going to lose on election day. Now, there is doubt whether we're going to know on election day exactly who lost and who won, but put that aside for a moment. Let's just assume eventually we get to a winner, which means eventually we get to a loser. If you are supporting the person that's losing, how are you going to handle that? And there's been many elections in my lifetime where I've voted for a particular candidate and that candidate lost. I'm trying to think. 1, 2, 5 times that has happened in my life where it's on my presidential election. 5 times I've voted for a particular candidate and that candidate lost. So it happens, but how do you handle that when it does happen? How do you move on after your favorite political candidate loses the election? And again, this is going to happen to one side or the other. Like, I think everybody who is watching this today, your candidate has a good chance of winning and has an equally good chance of losing. And I think if you prepare mentally for the worst, because it's easy to celebrate if your candidate wins. If your candidate wins, you're happy because that's the candidate that you threw your support behind. But if your candidate loses, does it devastate you? I'll talk about some of the feelings I've had in those 5 elections where I voted for someone else and the other guy got in. It's just an emptiness because you felt so vested in that leader being the right leader for the country. It's very tempting in your mind to think, oh no, the country's coming to an end now if that other person got in. And we're seeing some of that rhetoric out there right now. Oh no, if such and such gets elected, it'll be the end of the country as we know. And we're hearing all of those kinds of things on both sides. And it's hard for your brain not to go there if you're so vested in one candidate or the other that you just can't help but think those doomsday thoughts. And so how do you handle this? How exactly do you move on after your favorite political candidate loses? So I've got a couple of articles. Both of these, you guys, I think one of them came out just after the 2016 election. This second one I'm going to get to. And this other one was written just December last year. I think they're already trying to prepare people for the inevitable. Somebody is going to lose. So if you just joined us, how do you move on if your chosen candidate loses? And there's strategies, mental strategies, you can go ahead and start thinking about. And maybe somebody finds this on YouTube after the election is over and you're trying to lick your wounds and figure out what happened if your candidate lost. Hopefully this is good information today. All right, so let's get to the first article. This one is from theconversation.com. Headline: if you are disappointed with the election result, there are things you can do to help you move on. So on the morning after every election, millions of people whose side has lost the day feeling down. So they fell down the day after. All right, so this is from the UK, where they have the Labour Party and the Conservative Party. That's their version of the Democrats and the Republicans. So it was the Labour supporters after the 2019 election when news of the large electoral victory of the Conservative Party saw many take to social media to share their despair. And that's another thing. Don't feel like the next day you have to just lash out on social media. I think misery loves company, that whole notion of misery loves company, that if your licking of your wounds is manifested in sharing those thoughts online, can I suggest you don't do that? Because it's several fold. Number one, you're going to get an echo chamber of other people that will be just as upset as you are, and you're just going to make yourself more upset. Number two, if there was a winner, that's the winner. And that winner should be celebrated for the win, whether you agreed with them or not. And that's one thing I've always done. Regardless of who wins the election, even if I voted for them or did not vote for them, you always honor the office of the President of the United States. I've always done that, regardless of who the occupant is. And there's some that have been in there that I think have been the most horrid people ever that we could have ever elected. And there's some in there that I think have been pretty good in sharing the same values that I do. But regardless, you honor the office. And so you disrespect that office when you go and say all kinds of things. Because usually it's not just, oh, well, my candidate was wonderful and I really wish he'd gotten in there. It was too bad. If that's what you do, then great. But usually it ends up being a piling on the other person. And that doesn't do anybody any good. Interestingly, the results of previous UK elections had no discernible effect on overall subjective well-being at a national level, but it's a different story for people who strongly identify with the party. So if you're really vested, ideologically very strongly with one side or the other, and your side happens to lose, you're going to feel it the most. And I suppose that makes sense. Like, people that are very close to the Biden campaign and people very close to the Trump campaign are going to have a little more hurt than just the person who just casually voted for one or the other of those two candidates. And so that will have an impact. Recent research found that political partisans suffer a big drop in their happiness after their party loses an election. And that makes sense. If you're heavily partisan, then it's going to hit you hard, which is why I try to take the approach of not being partisan, but being objective and seeing the good in both candidates and seeing the bad in both candidates, and then making logical decisions between the two. I think we have become, at least in America, it's probably in different places around the world too, but in America, we've become so heavily divided that you have to be one side or have to be the other side. And I think most of us like to live in the nuance of the middle and be rational, observe what's going on, take a look at the whole scene, and then make a logical conclusion come election day. That's how most of people live their lives. They're not these hard ideologues. It's hard right and hard left. No, it's just, we just live our lives. We're everyday Americans, and yet they want to try to put you in these partisan camps. Oh, you must be an ultra right-wing radical, or you're an ultra left-wing radical. And it's like, no, I'm an ultra right down the middle, don't mess with me radical. And that's where most people live. Supporters of a party who win an election tend to be a lot happier. Well, that makes sense. However, supporters of the winning side tend to only experience a small bump in happiness following the win. Now that's interesting. You would think if you had a vested interest in a particular candidate that you'd be super happy if that candidate won. In contrast, those backing the losing party take a much bigger hit to their level of happiness. It's not at all surprising. Psychologists have known for quite some time that we suffer from losses a lot more than we savor equal gains. And that's important to remember. If your guy wins on election day, you're going to see a boost in happiness, but it's not going to be this just exuberant boost. But if your guy loses, oh, you're going to feel that. That's going to feel like a crater in your belly, and it's going to hit you hard. And it's going to hit you very hard if you're an ideologue, that you think literally, that if the other guy gets elected, the world as you know it is over. I'm going to move to Australia. You know, all those, I'm going to move to Canada. They say that every election. Well, if such and such wins, I'm going to move to Canada. Guess who moves? Nobody moves. I think after the last election, like, I think they showed 400 people in the whole country moved. That was it. That was literally it. And so people make those threats and say those things pre-election, I guess, to try to force people to vote for the way they want to vote. It's so weird. This time of year is so weird in an election year. Because right now, every little thing is just heightened to much bigger than it should be. So the loser's sense of misery can last much longer than a winner's joy of victory. One analysis of the 2016 U.S. presidential election found that Donald Trump's victory gave people who voted for him a fairly short-lived rise in happiness. However, within 6 months after the election, the joy of the victory had worn off. Supporters had returned to their level of happiness from before the election, but in contrast, people who backed Hillary Clinton still reported feeling less happy 6 months after the election than they did before the election. Clinton supporters who spent most of their time consuming media fared the worst. Well, think about it. That was a pretty historic election where you had an outsider come in and win. So that, and then you had someone that a lot of people felt was going to save the vestiges of what they believe in, and then she lost the election when she was expected to win. So I think a lot of this kind of how you feel is based on expectations. Everybody went into that 2016 election just assuming Hillary Clinton was going to win. So when she did not win, I think that added to the despair even more. And so this plays a role. And right now, maybe you look at polls, maybe you read specific things that are targeting what you believe already. You're getting a lot of confirmation bias about what you already believe. If that's all you're partaking in right now, can I give you in some words of advice? Skip around and read all kinds of things, not just on your side of things that you believe in, but really every side of it, because it'll give you a more total picture of what's actually happening. I've been on YouTube lately trying to watch both candidates to see when they do rallies and things like that and give talks. Obviously, I watched the debates. The one debate's coming up this Thursday. I think it's Thursday. Sometime this week it's coming out. And you try to get a vibe for where they are. If you only listen to one side or one view of the candidates, then you're probably going to miss what the reality is. And I think that adds to the misery post-election if your candidate loses, if all you looked at was one very jaded view of your candidate who might have propped them up to make them look better. And then if they lose, you're like, oh my gosh, it looked like they were a shoo-in, just like in 2016 when Hillary Clinton looked like she was a shoo-in. And all the polls leading up right to election day, every single one of them showed she was going to win and win big. And then she didn't win. And so people were like, oh my God. And I think that's why it hit them so much harder post-election. A 2015 study in Japan found that changes to people's levels of happiness following an election loss only lasted for a few days, but the people who fared the worst tended to have unrealistic expectations about how their party would perform. This suggests that those who hoped for the most tended to fall the furthest. And that's a good point right here. Regardless of who you're for in the election that's coming up, 2 weeks from today, we'll be voting for President of the United States. Regardless of whoever it is you're going to vote for, think about that for a moment. Regardless, are you putting all your eggs in that basket and this person has to win or the end of the world is imminent? If that's you and then your chosen candidate loses, you're going to be hit more mentally by that than those people who say, you know what happens, happens, but I'm supporting X candidate, okay? And so maybe that's part of the strategy going into this is don't set up a doomsday scenario in your head that makes it unrealistic as an expectation that your person that you're supporting has to win or else the world is over. And I've literally heard that on both sides. Joe Biden wins. Oh my gosh, we're going to become a socialist nation. He's not even going to be the president, and they're going to appoint president, and Bernie Sanders is going to come in and actually run the country. And then the other side says, oh my gosh, Donald Trump gets reelected. Oh, we got a racist in the White House. He can't denounce white supremacy. It's just horrible that people would vote for him, and we have such racist people in this country, and we're going to fall from within because we... And it just goes on and on and on. I know you see all that stuff out there. You can't avoid it if you pay attention even a little bit. But I'm here to say, regardless of who wins, it ain't the end of the world. Now, whoever you vote for, and you hope that they get in there, you're voting for them because you think they're going to be the one best to lead America going forward. And that's the beauty of a democracy. The people get to choose. And if the people choose the other side from what you voted for, then that's the way a democracy works. And so we need to let the system do what it's supposed to do. And that helps you mentally as well. And again, you're just joining us. We are talking about how you move on after your favorite political candidate loses an election, because we got one 2 weeks from today, and somebody's going to lose. Somebody, which means about half the population is going to be upset that their guy lost the election. So hopefully this is good info we're sharing here today. So I'm reading from this article from theconversation.com. The sense of misery that comes from losing an election can have wider impacts. Listen to this. When a party we identify with loses, we are likely to start questioning the legitimacy of the election process itself. We have seen that with questions about the Electoral College. And oh yeah, by the way, I don't talk out of my butt on this subject. I have a bachelor's degree in political science and a master's degree in public policy. So I know abundantly how all this system works, in case you're wondering. And so people have been questioning the legitimacy of like the Electoral College system, which was a very key check and balance so that the big cities and big states didn't dominate. That's why we have Electoral College. So the smaller states had a representative sample based on their population so that it actually more accurately captures who won America, not California, Texas, New York, and Florida, because those are the big states that tend to have the most electoral votes and the most population. This can actually undermine the loser's trust in the basic institutions of democracy. And we've seen that, where questions arise. Well, they must have cheated to get in, and there must have been meddling from other countries that caused this to happen. And we're already hearing some of those kind of undertones already. And post-election, get ready, it's going to happen again. It's almost like a coping mechanism for not facing the reality of the situation. If you lost the election, then you need to accept the results. But not everybody can do that. If we stop trusting the political institutions, we often start looking for alternative forms like social movements to make ourselves heard. And we've seen social movements rise over the past few years in response to what they believe are injustices and things that need to be righted. And again, that's a part of a democracy as well. If you don't feel like you're being heard, you have the First Amendment right to be heard in other ways. The despair of the electoral defeat has even bigger consequences for those standing for election. Losing candidates are faced with a big challenge to their sense of self. I remember watching a documentary from the 2012 presidential election, and Mitt Romney was the candidate on the GOP side, and Barack Obama won re-election. And they literally followed Mitt Romney around with a camera. There was no voiceover on it. It was just the whole time was just following him around in various places, and it was literally just the sounds of the campaign. It was on Netflix. I forget what it's called. It might be called Mitt. Anyway, if it's on Netflix, look it up. But it was wonderful because they showed the highs and lows and the ups and downs and all those things. And then at the very end, after he found out he lost the election and the despair on his face, and then the Secret Service dropping him off at his house, and then they go away and bye, and then he's sitting in his house, and you could just see this blank stare of what just happened. What just happened in the last year and a half of my life that I was pouring into thinking I was going to become the next president of the United States, and then he's left there alone and in silence, and then they black out and the movie's over. Really powerful, but preserving your dignity in the face of defeat. Those candidates, think about the two major candidates. One of them is going to lose, and one of them is going to have that defeat and that despair. To do this, they often shift blame from themselves, though, eventually to circumstances which are out of their control. And again, I think that's a human response. You don't want to believe that you were totally at fault, and most of the time you totally weren't at fault. There's lots of forces at play, but that's the humanness of it all. This may make someone feel better over the short term, kind of deflecting attention away from yourself, but it may not help in the long term. A recent study of closely run electoral races in the United States found that the losers live about 1 year less than the candidate who narrowly triumphed. I think often about the 2000 election, so that was 20 years ago. Those of you old enough to remember Bush Gore, and it came down to hanging chads in South Florida, and whoever won Florida was going to win the presidency, and it was literally mid-December before they finally had recounted 4 times, and it went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, enough, you've recounted 4 times, Bush won every time, he's the winner, and that was that. And so it was narrow margins. And I remember Al Gore after that had that same kind of response that Mitt Romney that I was just describing to you. And so the loser is going to take it hard. The loser is going to start the finger pointing blame game. And again, that's human nature that's going to happen. And so that's what's happening on the candidate level. So how do you deal with the disappointment that comes from a political loss? And especially those of you that have a particular candidate that you're supporting. It can be hard. The late sociologist and psychoanalyst named Ian Kreab noticed there was some big problems with the way we deal with disappointments in the modern world. Listen to this. When faced with disappointment, many people simply disengage. They distance themselves from what they had previously cared about, and they shift their hopes elsewhere. And I hope that does not happen. Because if you have a belief system that's based on a set of principles within you, then that should not be abandoned. You had those principles in your heart of hearts that made you want to vote for someone that represented those same values. Then regardless of the election, those things don't change. Now, maybe you reevaluate, do I really believe those things? Fair enough, because apparently most of America believed another way from you. But when you feel strongly about a particular candidate, you think everybody should think that strongly about that particular candidate. And so it's kind of a gut punch. Following a political defeat, a party activist might switch their dreams for a better world from party work into community activism. And that would be a positive thing. If you stop working in the political realm and start working local, and stop working in the political realm and start working like in your local community centers, homeless shelters, and trying to do real change, that would be a good proactive move. While this would bring temporary solace, the researchers noticed that it often left many trapped in a pattern of disappointment. This meant they would go from project to project, relationship to relationship, without ever questioning their own hopes and fantasies. And I guess it does come back to that. Who are you at your core? What do you believe in your heart of hearts? And what is it that gets you up in the morning and keeps you going when things get tough? And if you know all those things, then you really can't fall into that deep, dark pit of despair. Because you never faced up to your disappointment before, you remain trapped in an endless cycle which often ends with despair, disengagement, and searching for something new. So to get out of the cycle, they thought people needed to confront their disappointments. We need to ask what it teaches us about who we are, what we value, and what we can change. Man, that's so true. When you're disappointed, and I just wrote a post all about disappointment today on social media, go read it, but disappointment isn't the end. Disappointment is just the springboard for something good that could happen. And again, regardless of who you vote for and who you support, and if they lose, that's not the end of it. Think about it, and even in my lifetime, I was born in 1971, and I remember the very first real president I remember was Ronald Reagan. And I went from Reagan, and then Bush Sr., Clinton, Bush Jr., Obama, and now Trump. And so you kind of have the ebb and flow, because you had Republican, Republican, Democrat, Republican, Democrat, Republican. And so it kind of goes back and forth, and the world didn't fall apart. Now, some people say, well, the world's far different today than it was not that long ago, and that's true, but that's a cultural thing, not necessarily because of any particular candidate or president. So when you do this in a serious way, that's how we can transform the disappointment of defeat into an opportunity to reflect, recalibrate with a new reality, and then eventually move on. So this was the article in theconversation.com from just last year in December 13th, 2019. That was put out there. But I want to go to this 7 ways to heal if your candidate lost article. This is right after the 2016 election. This was published in the Undefeated, November 10th, 2016. Stay off social media and talk it out with your friends in real life. And that's what I was talking about earlier. The temptation is to go onto social media and continue to dump. Can I tell you, we got enough of that going on right now. And if we have so many people out there expressing strong viewpoints and really being ugly towards the candidate that's not their candidate, you notice that? Most of the stuff you see on social media isn't, rah, 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 look at my candidate that I support. Isn't he great? It's bleh on the other candidate. And it's the vile, vicious, nasty, and quite frankly, both sides doing it. That hurt my throat. Hang on a second. I need some water now. Quite frankly, both sides do it, and both sides say things that I don't think are particularly accurate about the other candidate. And see, that's so unnecessary. If there was a rule that all you could do is say who you're for and why, and say positive things about who you're for, man, wouldn't that be a great social media platform to go to if you could just see if somebody's like, well, I'm for X candidate because blankety blank blank blank, rather than I'm for X candidate and therefore the other guy sucks, the other guy's this, the other guy does that, he's a this, he's a that, and he's a... And that's where it goes off the rails. And I know that gins people up, but it also gins the division, which most of us hate this division. Like, I've been observing political campaigns since I was a kid, and it just seems to get wider and wider and wider, the division in our country. And it's because it's not checked, and it needs to be checked. All right, so let's get to this article, 7 Ways to Heal If Your Candidate Lost. And remember, this was written right after the 2016 election. You watched as the country voted in Donald Trump as the 45th president of the United States. For nearly 2 years before election night, you followed the race very closely. The campaign between Trump, the Republican nominee, and Democrat nominee Hillary Clinton was often dirty and emotionally taxing. Yet, a candidate some loathe is the one who won. It happened. It happens every single election, and someone absolutely has to lose. Political debates can lead to rage that lives well beyond election day, but people have to move forward. They have to move on. So here are 7 ways to promote healing if your candidate lost. And this was so good, you guys. Regardless of who loses the election, if it's your candidate that loses in 2 weeks, then this hopefully is some good information that will get you to start thinking ahead of time so that the inevitable, half of you your candidate's not gonna win. So you gotta be prepared with some of these strategies. So number 1, start by shedding, shedding. Get in touch with all of your feelings. Verbalize them out loud, own them, call them out, slowly release them. One feeling at a time, empty your mind and emotion of all those things that you just can't change. You can do this writing them down in a journal, having a sit down with a close friend or your spouse, and even yelling. That's good because you're letting it out. I think a lot of people have such emotional connection that they don't let it out, thus they can't heal. Number 2, get off of social media. Take a sabbatical from it. If you are on any social media site post-election, you're going to see all kinds of memes, posts, photos of people expressing their feelings. It is their right to do that. Some will not post their opinions in a tactful way, though, and you need to be mindful of that. Many will be bragging, ah, ha, 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 my candidate won, your candidate sucks, and you're only going to feel even worse. Others will display their feeling of victory, putting others down. The posts are meant to bait you into having an unhealthy dialogue. And my God, like, if this year has shown us nothing else, the ugliness of social media, like, I'm going to be purposely gone in the months of November and December. Gee, I wonder what's happening in those months. That's when the nastiest of nasty is going to be happening on social media. Jimmy Moore ain't going to be anywhere close to any of that. And I would highly encourage you, I'm going to be away anyway, so there's no reason for you to be on. I'm just kidding. But take a sabbatical away from social media. And I would say even if your candidate wins, take a sabbatical from social media. Because it's just going to be an ugly play. And a lot of people are doing it now. My numbers across my social media channels are way down. It's not just me, it's everybody. Because there's a lot of people that just saw everything in the presidential election year and everything else going on this year that they basically have disconnected. And I don't blame them. A lot of them are like, I love Jimmy Rants, but I can't stand being on social media. I'm like, okay, well, watch them on replay, but I get it. I don't bemoan you whatsoever. And I'm going away. And I encourage you guys. I'm not encouraging you to do anything you don't want to do, but I'm saying for your sanity's sake, whether your candidate wins or loses, just get off of social media for a period of time and let things die down. Because it was rough. After 2016, a lot of people lashed out online. It was not healthy. Stay away, take a break, have face-to-face telephone conversations with people you know. That way you can have a healthy debate with people even if they disagree with you. I have a friend in my life who is exactly the opposite ideologically from me. And I'm not a huge ideologue, but I lean in a certain direction and they lean in the opposite direction. And we have friendly debate. We love each other greatly and respect each other greatly, and it does not get into this tit for tat kind of ugliness. We respect each other and we're good friends. And so because of that, we're able to be honest about well, what about this position by this candidate that have you heard about this and then, oh yeah, I have, but it's not actually that, it's this and that. Oh, what about this on your candidate? Well, it's not, and you have the conversation. It's too bad we can't have those kind of conversations in a social media platform, but do seek those out in real life. So number 3, again, we're going over all of these ways you can promote healing if your particular candidate loses. Write a list of 3 to 5 things you find intriguing about the new president-elect. In other words, the guy you've been opposing, the guy you didn't like enough to vote for. Ooh. A list of 3 to 5 things. I wonder if you ask most people right now, so that support Trump, if Joe Biden wins, give me 3 to 5 things that you like about him, that you find intriguing. And then Joe Biden fans, tell me 3 to 5 things you find intriguing about Trump. That would be hard for a lot of people. I don't know that a lot of people, unless they're seriously about trying to heal, could actually do that. It's very difficult, they say in the article, but that's okay. This exercise is to establish perspective for you. Remember, this was written in 2016. Trump will be the president for the next 4 years. Start with one item at a time that intrigues you, good or bad. Then look for that in him going forward. So, man, what a great strategy to try to make your brain go where it doesn't want to go. Because your whole modus operandi, the entire lead up to the election is, my candidate good, other candidate bad. I can't think of anything good about the other candidate, which is never true, by the way. I think that's something you can even do right now. If you're for Joe Biden right now, think about 3 to 5 things that you think intrigue you the most about Donald Trump. And if you're a Donald Trump fan, think of 3 to 5 things you think are very intriguing about Joe Biden. Stretch your brain. Think this through. It will make you a more mature, wiser person if you start thinking in that way. And again, I know our brains are not naturally meant to go in that direction because of the vilification of the side that's not your side. And this is part of how you break that, how you break the vilification cycle of the other candidate. I don't know how we closed Pandora's box, because Pandora's box has been opened wide up, and it's been open for many years now. In my lifetime, it really started ramping up when Bill Clinton came on the scene. And yeah, it's just been really ugly from a national standpoint. Of course, that's about when I was going to college and going to school and get my degrees. So I'm a little more cognizant of that period of time. But since then, it just has gotten worse and worse and worse and worse as the divide is wider, 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 where you've got a very distinct group of people that believe this way, a distinct group of people that believe that way, and there's this mass in the middle are like pulled one direction or the other. And it's tough. So try to find those few things that the other side you find intriguing about. Number 4. Choose your circle wisely. Have a mix of people who you respect, understand, listen to, and know that your needs are important. Your post-election crew will help you cope. Have a small get-together and just talk it out. Keep your feelings within the circle. And these are people that you would trust. I suppose we do flock to people that have similar ideology to us, which would include political ideology. So if you're around a whole bunch of people that have all had your candidate lose, and you just have a session where you just talk it out, that could be cathartic. I wonder if you had a mixed group of friends, though, that may be from the side that won along with the side, that probably may not be a good idea. So maybe you weed out the ones that may be on the winning side. Number 5, write out a list of what's good in your life versus what you desire. Now keep in mind, this is healing from an election that did not go the direction you wanted it to go. This is so key here, because this is the first one that has nothing to do with the election itself. A list of what's good in your life versus what you desire. So where are you in your life? In other words, they're trying to get you to the core of who you are, why you're so upset, because the core of who you are is the basis for your values, and your values is the basis for a candidate that supports those things you believe in. And so now they're trying to make you evaluate once again and reevaluate and bring it back to the forefront. What is it that you believe in your heart of hearts? And if you get to that point where you figure out, oh my gosh, I don't really believe X, so therefore I need to shift that thinking, it's powerful, very powerful. Where are you in your life? Are you in the midst of an emotional turmoil? It's wise to take a moment to decompress. Name 5 things that are good in your life right now. A lot of people, that's a struggle. Are you healthy? Is your family healthy? Is your family happy? Are you currently employed? Is your life a step above where it was last year? Now write down all the desires of your heart of what you want to have happen. Would you like to be healthier, get a promotion? Do you have a passion project you want to finish? You want to pay off debt? Once you write down a few things that you want, it is possible to develop a level of expectation for the new president. Did you catch that? When you set the priorities in your own life of what you have in your life and what's good happening right now in your life, and then those things that you desire in your life, that helps you understand the expectations of a new president. Figure out the things you're passionate about. Write a letter to the new president of all your expectations for him as president. It may not reach him, but at least you put it out there in the world. Number 6, reset. Breathe. This may not be what you wanted, but it's something that you just can't change. Establish the new beginning. I've had many a moment where I've woken up the next day after an election, found out the other guy won, and it's tough. It's tough for a period of time. Those kind of things have never kept me down. I'd be down for maybe a day, kind of just contemplating, wow, I was hoping, blah, blah. But then the next day, okay, this is our new president. This is the new reality. Let's go. And then you go from there, because you can't change what has happened. What has happened, happened. And then the last one, number 7, move forward. You don't have to agree with the outcome of the election to accept it. Acceptance is difficult when you don't understand why the country didn't see things the way that you saw them. Again, it's something you simply cannot change. But this isn't the first time you've had to deal with things you didn't agree with. You can get through this one too. Like I said, 5 times in my lifetime that I voted for a president and they didn't win. And so what do you do with that? You just do your best to understand that you're not always going to win. How boring would life be, by the way, if we always got our way? Some people are like, wow, that would be glorious, to be utopia, always got my way. I think you learn more about yourself, your resilience, who you are as an individual, what you believe and why you believe it, when things don't go your way. And it's all the more prescient when it's a presidential election or other events in your life that can have a direct impact on your life. And so whoever you're voting for 2 weeks from today, half of you are going to be disappointed and the other half are going to be happy your candidate won. And if your candidate loses, you need to be prepared right now how you move on after that political candidate loses, because it can make you or break you. And hopefully this information I shared here today on Jimmy Rants was helpful in getting your mind in the right place about how to deal with it. All right, let's come here first to Instagram, next over to Facebook, finally over to YouTube. Thank you all for being here today on Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. If you want to support me, I have a Patreon page and a PayPal page, and a link, basically a donation of any amount would be greatly appreciated. JimmyRants.com. Temple says pray and pray hard. Yeah, I think that's always a good idea, regardless of who wins the election. And I've never understood that. Well, if my guy gets in there, I'll pray for them, but it's not my president if it's the other guy that gets in, so they don't deserve my, and I'm like, okay. And I've had many people say that at various times in my life. Well, your president, and because I voted for whoever it is, your president, I said, well, they're your president too. Oh, they're not my president. Well, they actually are. Duly elected president of the United States is everybody's president. And that's something to remember as well in all this. No matter who gets elected, they're your president. And you need to embrace them. Honor the office. Even if you didn't like the person that got in, honor the office enough to call them your president. Rachel said I needed to hear this today. Thank you, Rachel. I was hoping that this would be helpful and encouraging to some people, and I was trying to do it soon enough in the cycle. Like I said, I'm going to be gone. My last day is October 31st, and I'm going to be gone for 2 months, so I won't be here close to Election Day. So I thought, let's get this out there, get it up on YouTube, and then when whoever gets elected is put into office and elected, then people can do this and hopefully find encouragement and solace. So thank you for confirming this was a good topic for Jimmy Rants. Thank you, Instagram. Let's pop over here now to my Facebook page. What's up, Facebook? See what you have to say about this one. Kira says, I am nervous no matter who wins. I hope my candidate wins, but I feel the country will go down or go into civil war based on the protests we've seen. Yeah, that's kind of another backdrop to this particular election that we haven't seen in previous ones. There are the concerns that some of the things we've seen this year with the protests over social injustice is going to spill over into a post-election kind of apocalypse in all the big cities. And so I don't know. I mean, I think that's being thrown around as a threat to get people to vote one way or the other. But who knows? Who knows? But yeah, that will also play a role in this, how you feel post-election, because if cities are on fire, you may want to blame the person that won, maybe. I don't know. There will be that kind of thing going on. Let's see here. All right, thank you, Facebook. Now let's pop over here now to my YouTube channel. See what you guys have to say. I'm going to move you guys to the side just a little bit here, Instagram. All right, YouTube, let's see what you have to say on this one. Lady Madonna says, that's the American way. Sadly, there are many living here that are not true Americans. Well, I don't know about that. I mean, if you're in America, you're a true American. I get what you're saying, but yeah. Johanna says, Americans have survived the last years since Donald Trump's been president, so it's not the end of the world, and vice versa. We've survived other presidents that people thought, oh my gosh, the world is coming to an end because X person got put out there. I'm very relaxed about the future. I ceased being frantic when I learned how to burn fat well. Well, that's good. That's awesome, awesome, Harpsy. Jesus is Lord says, the guy I'm opposing is corrupt and mindless. There's nothing positive about him. Well, you could ask that of either side, and they will say exactly the same words about your guy and their guy. So it's just, that doesn't do any good. I hear you, but it doesn't do any good. Shirley says, this should definitely be interesting to watch unfold. I'll tell you what, politics would be boring without all the players in the modern world. Yeah, definitely some interesting characters in the world of politics right now that keeps it interesting. But I just hope people realize that no matter what happens, you don't need to let your life fall apart. And I'm about people. My heart has always been for people first and making sure that they take care of their mind, body, soul. And if you are so vested in one candidate over the other, and you know that it's going to wreck you if the other candidate gets in office, start working on that right now. Don't wait till post-election. Don't wait until everything comes in and the inevitable happens. Go ahead and assume, okay, what happens if my guy loses? Go ahead and go there in your mind. Go ahead, have the grieving process now. Now, hopeful that your guy will win, but one guy's not going to win. And so if one guy doesn't win, what are you going to do? And it happens to be your guy. What are you going to do? You got to figure that out. And you got to have that game plan in place so that your life doesn't fall apart just because the election didn't go the way you wanted it to go. That's it for this episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. And as always, you can engage live in the content. Come follow me right here. I'm on Instagram at LivinLowCarBman, LivinLowCarBman. Once you're there, engage live. We are here Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. So thank you so much for being here today. We also simulcast live on Facebook and YouTube. Watch the replay right here on Instagram, IGTV. Right as soon as the show is over, it will be put up right there. We also will put the past episodes up over on YouTube. If you type in a keyword, Jimmy Rants, you will find the show. Don't forget, today is Jimmy Rants on Livin' La Vida Low Carb Show Day. That is my flagship podcast. It's at llvlc.com. We air a best of Jimmy Rants episode. We air the audio on my podcast. It's also wherever you listen to podcasts, so go check that out today. And then finally, pop on over to the official website for this show. It is jimmyrants.com. And while you're there, see all the past episodes, and you can also support my work either through Patreon or PayPal. All of those links, you guys, jimmyrants.com. So that's it for now, you guys. We will be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern. So until next time, we'll see you then. All right. Thank you for being here, guys. I've been up since 1 a.m., so I'm starting to feel that a little bit. I may take a nap this afternoon. I don't like being up that early, but life doesn't stop just because you got stuff in your life. But let me pop off of here for now. Thank you so much for watching. Bye. Bye, YouTube.